Hi, it's Steve. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know about a couple of great opportunities at integrityandjoy.com. If you're like most people, your New Year's resolutions fade away by February, and that leaves you feeling kind of dejected, right? But you can set intentions this year and shift your mindsets and create new habits so that you can create meaningful, lasting change in your life. We've got a special introductory rate for new clients, a Jumpstart 2025 package of 4 mini sessions that will help you jumpstart your New Year's intention or new habit. We've got a 4-session discount with a huge savings and a special New Year's package that will get you the support you need and deserve to have a great year with a discount of over $500. So go to integrityandjoy.com for more information. Let's make 2025 a great year. Welcome to Integrity and Joy. I'm Steve Walker. This is episode 7 of Integrity and Joy, my conversation with Scott Zumwalt. So welcome to episode 7. I am Steve Walker, former U.S. diplomat, activist, and educator, and now a life coach, meditation teacher, and podcaster. So welcome. If this is a return visit for you, welcome back. You're going to really love this episode today. And if this is your first time joining us, thank you. Really appreciate it. And you picked a great episode to start with. I hope you go back and listen to the previous ones, but this is a great first one to start with. This is my conversation with Scott Zumwalt. And Scott is a former student of mine. I taught him over 20 years ago. And he went on to Georgetown University. He had been like a really amazing student and a real innovator as a student. He talks about a little bit about this, video he did for my class that was really spectacular. And eventually gets involved in early on when social media was really starting to be a thing in the early 2000s. He was new media director for Kay Hagan's successful U.S. Senate campaign. He was a digital aide on Hillary Clinton's first presidential campaign, in the trenches, an early innovator in 2008. And he was a leading or has been a leading digital innovator in the LGBTQ rights movement, helped launch and grow the award-winning It Gets Better project, which is amazing, and also has consulted for the Human Rights Campaign and served on the campaign board of the Victory Fund, which helps elect openly LGBTQ people. He's now the managing director at Bully Pulpit International. He's got over 15 years of experience in digital strategy and marketing for Fortune 500 companies, progressive political campaigns, nonprofits. He's worked on, 4 U.S. Senate races for BPI and 2 winning statewide ballot initiatives. I mean, the guy's amazing. He was recognized on the American Association of Political Consultants 40 under 40 list. And yet he's incredibly humble and soft-spoken and reflective. We end up talking about all of this, the political stuff and digital marketing and the evolution of his career, which I think is a really interesting story about how, there's this obviously like common threads going through his career, but he's also like very responsive and innovative in building his career along the way, taking advantages of opportunities and creating opportunities along the way. So I think you'll really enjoy this. I think people in their teens, 20s, 30s, even 40s will really be inspired, by his, professional journey. And he also talks about his own, personal discovery journey and coming out and how that affected his personal and professional life. And I think it's just really a great story, and I think you'll really enjoy it. I hope you're following us already. If not, please do. Please leave a rating and review wherever you found this podcast, and make sure you're following us on social media at Integrity and Joy on all the platforms, and that you, if something here resonates and you'd like to have a conversation about whether life coaching could benefit you, go to integrityandjoy.com and we'll have a talk. And now here's my conversation with Scott Zumwalt. All right, so Scott, welcome. I'm really excited to do this. We've known each other how many years now? It's over 20.
It was back in the year like 2000, 2001.
Wow.
When I was at Greeley, and you had came on board there.
Yeah. So I was teaching, I guess at that point I'd have been teaching full time a year. Right. And we had an interesting connection too. I think we first worked together when you were in 10th grade, which is hard to imagine. And but I worked with your aunt
Yes,
in
that's
DC,
correct.
right? Which is kind of wild. She was an amazing lawyer, Hill staffer, activist. I mean, really an extraordinary one of those people behind the scenes that never gets the credit for being a part of amazing things. And she was pivotal during the genocide in Bosnia and its aftermath in terms of helping to advocate for and lay a lot of the groundwork for, holding war criminals accountable and seeking justice in the region. So really amazing. And
I think a lot, from her experience and that connection, to you as well as I think her siblings and my mother, and their, various bits of, taking part of working in Washington at different points in their lives and their dedication to public service and making the world a better place, and no matter what they touch, that really is what kind of drove my interest in a lot of the subjects that you taught. And I think that helps kind of capitalize and catapult me to Washington, D.C. Because I think I remember we were doing more of a kind of a current events course with you as an elective. And I think it was one of my first courses in high school where I felt it was directly tangible to my current day to day, like, and the future versus looking 50 years in the past, which, it history repeats itself. It definitely that's definitely helpful, but it made it really interesting. Having gone through a major presidential election in 2000, that really piqued my interest in politics and the challenges that happened with recounts and all that happened there.
Right.
And 9/11, of course, which I think we both kind of went through, being in New York and being at Greeley that day and kind of watching how people reacted and the impact that happened on our community are sort of two of the things that really drove my interest in Washington and a lot of the topics that you've been involved with throughout your lifetime.
Wow. Well, that certainly, if I played even the smallest thing in inspiring you, that means a lot. But yeah, your family history, I mean, it is really amazing. And it goes back to, was it your grandfather or great grandfather was an admiral? I mean, a very famous admiral, right?
Yeah, it's a distant cousin, but we share the same.
Oh, okay.
So it's
I had
funny
that wrong.
because I feel like on my mother's side, you have my aunt who her father was big in European U.S. relations, worked at the United Nations, at the Danish consulate during World War II, helped kind of negotiate the treaty between the U.S. and what was then the government in exile, with Denmark and turning over Greenland to the Allies and making sure that the Nazis couldn't build bases on there or leverage weather stations for use during World War II, which is really important. And so his contribution were something that I've always kind of looked in awe of, and how important we are in this world to establish those connections with each other and our global allies. And then on my father's side, his namesake is one of his cousins was an admiral in the Navy and was known as really liberalizing the Navy and kind of opening the doors and like allowing men to wear beards, and encouraging new opportunities for women and Black Americans to take part in service. So I definitely look back, and I don't want to say I stand on the shoulders of giants, but I think we all do as humans. No matter what our parents or relatives do, they've all kind of left an impact on other people or this world and that shapes us and kind of what we do and what we're interested in, whether you like it or not. Like it does influence that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a lot. I mean, that's a like, some people grow up and they feel like they have to follow on in the footsteps of a relative or, a family member of some kind. But you have this like amazing set of legacies in some ways. Like at what age were you first aware of that being your family culture?
It's funny because I think I'm fortunate in that my parents never put the pressure on me to go in one direction or another. And I give them a lot of credit at that. I think not everyone is in that fortunate of a position
Yeah.
to be able to say I want to do this, and then they kind of let you do it. Now I would never really ask them to do things that were probably outside of the possibility for
Right,
kind of
right.
student at the time. Like I remember I kind of ditched trumpet to do TV production because I thought that that was really interesting and probably the right call because I now work at a digital marketing agency, and I think definitely instilled some of the kind of traits and interesting things that I want to do. But I think from a family perspective, um, it it's more it kind of I take from the values that like my family has instilled on me and then just apply it in kind of the different routes that I've taken over the course
Yeah,
of my career. This everyone when you're in high school and when you're in college, people always want to pretend like you got to have that master plan and stick to it. Um, it's helpful to have guidelines, but that's really restrictive
yeah.
because when you're in your teens and 20s and 30s, frankly, you're always learning what's interesting, what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And the thing that I've learned in kind of working in the field that I work on, I learn a lot more about the things I don't want to do
Mm,
than when I do than when I
yeah,
do. And so you learn so much from that, and that helps guide you in like, oh no, I don't want to do this just because I'm not interested in that topic. And then sometimes the topics may be interesting, may not be interesting, but you may find purpose and fulfillment just because you like how it gets done or the people.
mm,
But we can get more into that. So,
yeah, right. No, that's a great point. Were there any other things about your childhood that you think had a big impact on who you are now as an adult?
yeah, I would echo what I mentioned before, which was the 2000 election and 9/11 were big historical events that shaped
Yeah.
why I wanted to come to Washington. I decided I wanted to go to college in DC no matter what school I got into, uh, which again was something that I think my parents respected and
Mm,
like gave me the opportunity to be able to do that versus staying closer to home or doing something else along those lines, but
right.
able to go and drive to my passion on that.
Wow. What was, I mean, the election, I get that. Like, it's such a pivotal election. It was historic, it was dramatic. What, what impact do you think 9/11 had on you? Like, what was it about that that drove you to DC?
Yeah. I think because of the election, I was very into the news and current events. Um, and I think that kind of laid the groundwork for when that horrific day happened. Uh, it really made me reflect and understand that, there's so much that goes on outside of high school campus, outside of New York City, outside of America that impacts us all at the end.
Yeah.
And it made me interested in like how we can prevent that from happening, how we can solve these issues that are happening in other countries, uh, and how we can come together. And it's I'm not gonna lie, I am a huge Democrat, and I look back on the time, and our country was so united at the time, uh,
Yeah.
And I remember I'm a huge Yankees fan. And, when George W. Bush threw out the pitch at the Yankees game, and kind of the world kind of united, around that,
Yeah.
and what we were celebrating that it was a patriotic time. I think, some might argue that that kind of blurred the lines of what was going to come, months later, years later.
Right.
that
Right.
we
Yeah.
we definitely made some mistakes from a international policy perspective. But at the same time, I think that that kind of unification of how we all came together, and then we started solving big problems, gave me hope that, hey, like, things can happen in Washington. Washington can be a solution. Um, what I've experienced since then is more of the gripes around Washington's broken. But I realize the
Yeah.
world is much more nuanced and complex.
Yeah.
You read about in the paper, or what you see online is usually a reduction, to the minimum versus what actually is going on behind the scenes, which people are talking about, and they're trying to make the world a better place.
Right. Right. So then you go to DC for college. You go to Georgetown, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of make your mark right away. Tell us about that and the Georgetown Democrats and how that all happened.
Yeah, it's funny. I just wanted to be in DC. And I think at the time, I'll admit there's a lot of students that go to school in the Northeast, probably other parts of the country too, but suburban, upper middle class areas, and they're all fighting to go after that top school to get into. They want that name. I was really proud of that. I worked hard, to get in, and I think I put a lot of pressure on myself,
Mm,
as I was there. And I have to admit, my first semester was probably, really difficult. I was adapting to like a whole different world. Like you know dorm culture, and things that, like, I think you see in the movies, that it's like, oh, it's so much fun, where at the same time that was just different for me. I wasn't used to, like, kind of living in a dorm with a bunch of people,
right.
and kind of, going to classes at different times of the day, but not having like a full school day. What do you do in this home?
Right.
And then just meeting new people and trying to find like-minded people. I think once I got through that first semester and year, like, each year frankly got better and easier, just because I found the people that were going to become lifelong friends of mine.
Mm.
One of which is actually working with me today,
Oh, that's great.
and just got out of the meeting. So I'm it's kind of exciting that the people that you meet over the years are, you never know when they're gonna still be around, and it's really important to kind of keep those bonds and connections up along the way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And so, okay, so you get there and it's a big transition. But in terms of getting involved with the Georgetown Democrats, you kind of crushed it and you end up, what is it, the first ever like freshman to lead the Georgetown Democrats or something like that, right?
Yeah, I was a sophomore,
Okay.
and it may be different today, but the it's most likely that freshmen and sophomores are usually the more active in campus activities
Right.
and
Right.
organizations. I think as people get older, they either get separate side jobs, or they kind of have already, scratched that itch, or they've figured out one thing that they actually really like, which I think, probably that was me. I found it right away with the College Democrats, and so I got really involved. I think, I found my people, at a time in campus that at the time was seen as pretty conservative. It's a, Catholic school. Of all the Catholic schools, a Jesuit school, so seen as a little bit more liberal, but still,
Right.
we couldn't have a pro-choice organization on campus that didn't have an asterisk in it. Like, it had to have an asterisk instead of the O. I'm not sure what it's like today, but
Wow.
we were that kind of, I think, drove me a little bit to help shape the minds and open the minds of people that were there, and get them
Mm.
involved, and get them caring about politics. But I started, I I think my leg up, frankly, goes back to, when I first applied for a position. It was to be a dorm captain. Um, and that's when you put flyers up in your dorm for events. And at Georgetown, it's a super competitive, like, position, but like, people don't take that seriously. Um, the woman I work with now today, she also applied to be a dorm captain.
Huh.
I took the time to type my application and print it out and submit it. Everyone else just kind of scribbled, on a piece of paper. And I remember to this day, like people were just impressed that like, oh wow, you took the time to do
That's
this.
great.
And that was a leg up. And then like, one thing leads to another there. I get really involved. I'm excited about the programs and events that we have. We have members of Congress come visit. We had like Howard Dean and John Kerry and others over the years come speak. Bill Clinton had come every year just because he was an alumnus. And so had an opportunity where I definitely got star-eyed, and when I had a brief chance to meet some of those speakers, and at each and every way that I met each of them, I think I got really more excited about politics in general,
Yeah.
and that really sparked me to intern on the Hill, like as a sophomore. I found the extra time and just did loaded my schedule with internships, and that also I think served me well in terms of understanding what the real world was like, and also allowed me to parlay, my internships into a full-time job, when I was a senior year without having to stress about it.
Wow. And what do you think like your biggest takeaways were at the end of those 4 years at Georgetown? And and to what extent did your understanding of politics and the role you wanted to play in it, to what extent did that changed or evolved at that point?
Yeah. I my biggest takeaway was from college in Georgetown. It was the the experience itself was so defining for me.
Mm,
It I can't pinpoint a specific class, a specific moment. Like I think you learn a lot through the combination of all of those things plus your personal life and your friends, and like it's almost this melting pot of like you finding yourself a little bit and understanding, like what you're interested in and who you want to be. And frankly, like at the time, like at the time I thought it was straight, so like there was also that factor in terms.
wow.
And so it wasn't
Wow.
until like after college that I had that revelation,
Wow.
or that came out. So there's a lot to unpack there. But I think my looking back on it now, if I were to like talk to myself and give myself
Yeah.
advice, I'd say you don't have to have it all figured out. Take it one step at a time and enjoy each day.
Wow.
As I can't go back to those college days now. Like I think I did everything right at the end of the day, but it is a special time in everyone's life.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be, there are going to be highs and lows, but you're going to learn a lot from all aspects of it.
Yeah. Wow. So okay, so how would you have described yourself at what were you 22 when you graduated, something like that, right? How would you have described yourself at that moment? Like who was Scott then?
I thought I would be like the right hand person to the next senator or the next president of the United States. You kind of pick the character in any like political show, and
Right.
the aide from West Wing or whatnot
Right, right, right.
be in it. And I think I'll admit when I graduated, I thought I had everything going for myself. I went to a great high school, went to a great college, had a resume that was like 2 years ahead of it, many other people, just because of
Right.
internships. I had other
Right.
courses that I took, so that opened up some time on my schedule and allowed me. And then I kind of get into my first couple of jobs, which are on political campaigns. Um, and it's nonstop. It's 9 to 9,
Yeah.
5 to 7 days a week, depending on the time of year. And you're kind of put through the ringer a bit. Like here you are, you're thinking you're graduating from this prestigious university, and then all of a sudden you're waking up in Iowa and you're talking to Iowa voters every single day.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with Iowa voters, but I think that there's a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, I'll be writing speeches for the next president. That
Right.
wasn't me, but at the same time, I think I had a higher standard of myself,
Right.
and I put too much pressure on myself. And I
Mm.
put myself out, I think, a few times really early on in my career because of that. But in those moments, I think I learned a lot about, okay, what really matters, and what types of roles I like to play. And it really got me back to DC, which I think I've
Mm.
been, I've been in DC ever since 2008 for the most part, and have enjoyed my time here.
So what were those first couple of campaigns you worked on?
So in when I was a senior at Georgetown, I was then Governor Tom Vilsack's, one of his aides. I was actually like one of the first uh, national aides for him as he was thinking about running
Wow.
for president, which I think also gave me like sort of a fun, like, uh, gave me a fun role to play because there weren't many people around and there were some smart people, and then there was me as like doing like executing the work. So I got like, I was recording videos on my camcorder. Like, there were things like that that I was doing that was like you find a way to make it work. And like, you had a bunch of older staffers that just didn't know what video was. And I leveraged a lot of the things, the hobbies and things I picked up on from over the years and just applied it to my work. And I think that helped enable me to stand out, a little bit more. And so I worked for the Governor of Vilsack's Heartland PAC, which was his uh, political action committee that helped elect Democratic governors and secretaries of state. This was after the '04 election where we had the issue or the 2000 election where we had the issue in Florida, um, with the Secretary of State there that many would say was very biased in the counting of ballots, and changed the direction of history for all of us.
Yeah.
And how we wanted to invest time and resources in that, which at the time no one had paid attention to secretaries of state races, and they're the chief election officials. I eventually worked on his presidential campaign, which I'm not even sure will make it into history books. It was 88 days, I think.
Yeah.
That got me to Iowa, and he dropped out shortly after Obama jumped in the campaign. And I just remember I was standing outside in a cold January or February in Des Moines, Iowa, having a little team meeting with Josh Earnest, who is became Obama's press secretary.
Right.
Um, and I was fortunate enough for him to be my boss for a month and a half, and he was a great boss. But we all had our jaws open, and we all knew that we would probably have to find a new job after seeing the Obama rally in Springfield, Illinois, with tens of thousands.
Yeah. Right.
And we could barely get 100 people to come to an event. And
Wow.
so the little retail politics of old dramatically changed with that '08 election. And from there, I ended up working for the Clinton campaign. Um, Coming from Chappaqua, I liked both Clinton and Obama, but there was like this New York connection there. And I enjoyed my conversations with that team, and got involved in that election, and got to travel the country and got to, explore and get outside my comfort zone a little bit and see places like Oregon, Montana, and go through that primary, which was a long one. And then from there, I ended up working for Kay Hagan in North Carolina, who was the state senator at the time running against Elizabeth Dole, for Senate. And she was down double digits in June. I joined with a bunch of other people who joined from the recommendation by the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. We were like 20, there were 20 people at the time, and then we grew the campaign to 100 people. And we ended up, crushing her in the general election. And Dole did not do herself any favors. Like, she called Kay Hagan godless in the TV commercial. But it was quite possibly the best campaign I've ever worked on. Friends I've met along and kept along the years. And she was a great individual. Unfortunately, she passed a few years back, but she was someone who was in politics for the perfect reasons to really help
Mm.
constituents. And you could tell that from meeting her and being up close with her. I got to travel with her all throughout the state because I was the one with the video camera recording her on the ground. and it kind of renewed my faith in politics after I think
Wow.
the 2008 election, which I think was exhausting.
Wow. So when you got your first job, right? So I guess that was with Vilsack's PAC. That was the first one. How'd you get that? And then after that, like, was it pretty easy once you had done a good job with him, even though his campaign ended up being short-lived? Was it pretty easy to then find something else because you'd done a good job? Like, how did that all work?
Yeah, I mean that you said it there, and it sounds like that's what you tell people. The secret's out. That's how it works. Uh, and I think the other thing I'd probably tell myself way back when is like it's not always like who you work for. It's like how you work for those people and who you meet along the way when you work for
Right.
them. So like don't like I think there's so much pressure to like work for the top company or work for that like maybe you'll get there. But don't assume that don't put the expectation level that you'll get there on day one. In fact, that might not
Right.
be the right reason because you haven't kind of hit the ground running or, you know, like I felt so much more confident in my career like 4 or 5 years in. And when you say my career, and we'll get into this, the career's kind of gone all around all over the place a little bit. So that's something that's been exciting along the way. But you just you hit the ground running. You start to do a good job, and success breeds success. So like when you start doing good work, or people know that they see that you're a hard worker, or they have faith in you, they're going to give you more opportunity.
Right.
And then it's really on you to seize that, and then stay in touch, and then opportunities open up. Everyone wants to help each other. If you start to do good work for a boss, they'll want to bring you along somewhere else, and that's happened to me uh, many times.
Yeah, it's like networking. I always tell clients that networking should be your main hobby, right? Because it's these connections that eventually are going to probably get you your next job, and paying it forward, like you said, like bringing other people along with you that you value,
Yeah.
and quality tends to get recognized, right? And effort tends to get recognized, including by people. It sounds like people who are in the opposition, right? I mean, it's not just the people that you're working with, but everybody else notices who's doing a good job and who's working their butt off on other campaigns, and at some point down the road, they'll want to work with you. So
Yeah, it's not. It's a especially in the world I live in, it's a small city, and you develop a reputation around yourself, and um, I think I talk to a lot of my staff who are just early on in their careers, and I try to remind them that like don't forget to take a step back and see the big picture.
right.
Like you don't burn any bridges you may not want to or regret later. I have I work at a company now where one of the partners at my company was an intern at an old company that I worked at. He wasn't my intern, but like he was in the mix. You never know.
You never know.
Put age aside, you never know when you're going to encounter the same people again.
Right.
That's usually not up to you. Like you'll just run into someone who, hey, you went to school with, or someone else, and so you always want to leave a good impression, and you never know. That I've seen so many people like burn a bridge, and then it kind
Mm.
of prevents them from other opportunities down the road, or they give up on Washington and then have to move to a new industry or a new city to do something else.
Right. Right. And so if someone were trying to get into the political world now, right out of college or during college, right, looking for the internship or the first job, what would you recommend to them?
Yeah. I join a campaign. Like I think it's we're a few weeks out now when this goes live, and maybe we'll um, this will all be away from us, but we're in the crunch time here. But join any campaign, and I think that could be a local one. Every election year there's always a race going on. That could be a local race. It could be as local as a school board race, to county executive race, to a state legislator race, and it doesn't have to be like the federal or presidential ones. The presidential ones are probably not going to be the ones where you're going to get more of an experience on. It's actually going to be the more local ones that you're going to meet and have a bigger role to play, and probably find more fulfillment. Versus if, I'm not sure how many Kamala Harris offices there are in New York. I hope there aren't that many given the political map, but you're going to get much more activity if you volunteer for, different campaigns there.
Right.
Seek internships. Like I'm a firm believer that like people can always just tell you no. Like I once pitched an internship to a company, and this was the company that eventually got me connected to Tom Vilsack to work
Oh,
with.
wow.
And I was doing college dem stuff, and I reached out to a bunch of agencies that are in town that do public affairs and political campaigns, and one was Dewey Square Group at the time. And for some odd reason, their president agreed to meet with me. And by the end of the meeting, he offered an internship, and I just wanted to work for free. And then he told me, "Oh, pay me per hour." I was like, "Oh, that's great!"
That's
Like,
great.
yeah. And more internships in DC are paid now. It's not much. Every little bit helps, but at the time that was shocking, and I think I couldn't say no. I was like so excited that I was getting a paycheck.
That's awesome. So you mentioned before that when you graduated Georgetown, you still thought you were straight. When
Yeah.
did that change and how?
Yeah, I think it was honestly when I probably always knew. I just kind of tucked it away, and
Yeah.
like I wasn't ready myself. It was more comfortable on it, and um, it probably wasn't until I went out after college, got to see the country, meet new people, was outside of this like kind of Georgetown DC bubble where I think I probably was skeptical of like going outside my comfort zone just because
Mm,
DC, at least at the time, or I thought it was a pretty buttoned up culture, and that um, being able to join a campaign that was a little bit, you meet people across like different areas of the country and different backgrounds and perspectives, and it just kind of opens your eyes of like, oh wait, like this is something that maybe I was just like kind of suppressing inside me that like is normal at the end of the day, because I was so probably career driven and focused on
mm,
other things throughout college, uh, and that was where I think the 1 to 2 years after college where I got to experience America and get outside of DC and New York, and then coming back to DC is when sort of I started coming out to people, and then from there it was like a journey. Like I think uh, uh, I just found myself with such greater confidence after that happened,
mm.
that I think when people tell you your personal life, your health, and your intellectual capabilities are not intertwined in what you can do on a day-to-day basis, they are. Like you have to be of a good mindset. You have to be in a good situation to be able to succeed. And I remember those like first couple of years after I come out, it just felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulder,
Mm,
and I was just able to be myself. And again, I was fortunate to be surrounded by people I worked with who were on democratic causes and uh, uh, were going to be open to me. I didn't have the
right,
pressure. The pressure was all on myself,
right,
and I was
right.
fortunate about. And I think I started getting active in advocacy efforts in the LGBTQ community shortly after that, mainly because I almost felt guilty because I was like, oh wow, like I had like, not that my coming out was not hard. It was like there were some rough days, nights, and whatnot, but so many people had it harder and were
Yeah,
bullied or like put themselves in situations that they would definitely regret later. And that's where I kind of got connected up with at the time with Dan Savage, who created the It Gets Better project.
right, right.
And it was fortuitous because a former boss of mine was his ex-husband was Dan's publicist, and Dan had just launched a video in October of 2010 telling kids it gets better, and it went viral. And then all of a sudden, he didn't know what to do with it. His computer crashed because he was getting
Wow.
emails on every comment to his YouTube video. And for someone who is at least ahead of his time in terms of communicating on different platforms, podcasts, and whatnot,
Yeah.
he wasn't so technically inclined. So he needed help. And so, here I was, someone who,
Wow.
my old boss knew that, hey, this not only would be interesting, but B, like, Scott could actually help. And then one thing led to another. I ended up kind of managing the project for like the start, like that first week on.
Amazing.
In this huge campaign that I think I could have never anticipated, and it changed my trajectory. Something I would have never have anticipated or planned for, but something I still look back on as such an important piece of my life.
Yeah. I mean, and the project had such a huge impact on so many people. I mean, it really did. I remember even in school, like it changed the dialogue for a lot of kids. It empowered a lot of kids. It became the language that adults use trying to help kids who are coming out and wrestling with the bullying and all that. It was amazing, so impactful. So that's this big turning point for you, right? And yet the groundwork had been laid. You'd been this, let's call it pioneer in a way, in terms of trying to get campaigns to think differently about technology and how it can be used to magnify their message and reach a broader audience. And where did that come from? Like, I mean, what was the first instinct to get the video camera out and be following Vilsack around? Or like, why are you the guy or one of the people who really has been a pioneer in terms of using technology and in particular social media as it evolved in political campaigns?
Yeah, it's funny because I do think my seeds were planted when I was back in high school, and I saved my allowance money to buy a camcorder. Like, I actually do remember recording a video and editing a video for one of your classes as a project.
I remember that.
It was a lot of fun. Like, I definitely, it was overkill. Like, I still have it now, but it
It
was
was
like
extraordinary, actually.
it was, but it was something that like I just kind of went with it, and I think I chased my interest, and um, I thought the changing mediums and the innovation that was happening in the space of like we're going from cassette video cameras to now digital, like at the time, and you know I didn't really know what that meant in the long run. All I knew is that this was fun. I get to use technology. I loved having the latest tech and like playing around with it. And so it's like I was one of those people that I had a Palm Pilot when I was in college for no reason whatsoever. There's no reason for me to have a Palm Pilot. Like, but I thought it was cool because I could like play solitaire on it or whatnot. Um, so I think I just chased some of my hobbies, which were being interested in technology, and applied it to
Yeah.
my job. And no one, I think the thing, especially a lot of the current generation that's entering the workforce, is something that I don't see as much, but could really go a long ways. Is you know, there's no one way to solve a problem, and oftentimes when you're asked to do something, people want you to think outside the box and find an easier way, a better way, or some other way to accomplish something that's going to either save time, save money, or be better. Um, I kind of always viewed that with the use of technology.
Mm.
And I also liked video more than writing, frankly, at the end of the day. Even though I think I've become a stronger writer in the work that I do, day to day here in my career. But I think that I always thought about video or graphic treatment or other ways that we can communicate that would help get our message across.
Mm.
And as I mentioned earlier, a lot of my jobs early on in my career, we call it a lean and mean operation. Like, you find a way to make it work. There's not that many people, finite resources, but that's where opportunity is, because like you
Right.
do things that otherwise would go to someone more senior, or they would pay an agency to go create something.
Right.
With this, it was a bunch of older senior advisors that did not understand tech, one of which had the foresight to tell me, hey, even if you don't like this digital stuff, stay with it.
Wow.
I remember her telling me that. It's not like I was going to move away from it ever. But at the time, I was like, of course. Like, why wouldn't I? But that definitely, helped shape the jobs I took from then on out. Um, the job I'm in today and the jobs I've had the last like 5 or 10 years, like frankly, didn't really exist.
Right.
High school. Uh,
Right.
so that's also something to like just consider in terms of being a little bit more open-minded about how you can remain adaptable to a changing landscape, and take advantage of that when opportunities arise, just because you have a little bit of the background and expertise, the right people, and you have a great track record.
Right. Right. So connect the dots then. So it gets better. That's 2010, I think you
Yep.
said, right? So, and that job and organization, I mean, that really comes about really sort of at the beginning of social media starting to evolve, right? So what did you learn from that? And then connect the dots to today. Like, how did you get
Yeah.
from there to here? Because it really does feel like that's the fork in the road,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think everyone points to the 2008 election as the digital election. You had the Obama campaign. You had people on that campaign that really pioneered the use of social media
Right.
in campaigning. And frankly, I think I don't know if any campaign will ever be able to say like they moved the industry that much further in a short time period.
Wow.
It was like night and day, like what Obama and the campaign did, and other campaigns were doing. Frankly, it was also just like a sign of the times because of social media, because of digital and what was going. And at the time, social media was seen as this warm and fuzzy place, like this place where you would connect with your friends and family. When I first got Facebook, it was 2004, and I was really excited because I could connect with people in my classes at Georgetown, and we could trade notes about like class, and we could take turns. Like it was actually like a tool. Like that's what we used,
Right.
and then you could stay connected with your friends and be fun. And then over the years, of course, I think you started to see bad actors come into play. And you saw this in the 2016 election
Sure.
in Russia. But I think over that time horizon, um, uh, there was just a massive influx in the use of digital media. The amount of time people spend on digital media has just gone up exponentially. We're sort of at a peak period now. Like the pandemic was actually the peak, and now we're kind of back to a level where like how much screen time can someone actually have in a given day. But most of that is spent on devices, and the iPhone coming out, and how we communicate has dramatically changed, and that's only made it more important for jobs and careers like mine, where we try to find new ways to speak to people and market to people on a day-to-day basis, whether that's through social media, whether it's through digital platforms, podcasts, or other ways, like we're doing right now.
Right. So how long were you at It Gets Better?
Yeah, I was actually doing a grad program at the time,
Huh?
getting a web design certificate.
Wow.
Just because I felt like after my first couple jobs, I needed to like more formalize my technical expertise.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, which I'll be honest, I'm not sure if I needed to do. I think I just
Right.
needed a break. So it was an expensive break. Uh, but it helped. I think it gave me the time, and actually it opened the door where when this opportunity that gets better came out, um, I had free time.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and one thing led to another. I didn't know I was like signing up for something that would become a full-time job essentially. I ended up just being a contractor. I put this program that I was doing on hold, and I just started doing it full time.
Wow.
And at that point, one thing led to another, 2, 3 months, 4 months slide in. I was like, well, I'm really enjoying this. This thing is taking off. It's saving a lot of people. It's empowering me. It's my passion.
Yeah.
Like, can I make this real? Like, and so I took a few other consulting offers at the time to take on a couple more projects. I never sought to build a company on my own just because I couldn't keep a plant alive in my apartment. Um, so I kind of accidentally fell into it, and that's life. Like, and it was like
Wow.
one of the biggest rewards, both in terms of meaning and passion, but also in what that helps parlay later on and what I've been able to achieve since. So it was about uh, a full like maybe year or two where I was like more exclusively working on that and then continued as a contractor for a few more years later. And now, even still to this day, every couple months, I get a call from them asking about how something's set up or, hey, we want to pick your brain about strategy. It's its own nonprofit now.
Wow.
It's doing amazing work connecting people, like serving a lot of international audiences now, where I think a lot of the larger LGBTQ nonprofits can't touch as much just because they're more they have to abide more by certain uh, regulations and things like that, and how they are set up in their own like kind of administrative functions. So really creating grant programs that really empower young people in different countries to speak out, as well as like create a safer space for different LGBTQ young people in different countries.
Wow. So, so when you started doing the consulting, what spoke to you about that? Like, why was that such a powerful draw for you rather than following what a lot of people would have felt like a more traditional career path?
Yeah, it's funny because I I'm someone where I think I prefer like a more linear, like structured path.
Right.
Like I like structure. At the same time, I think when I'm in that structure, I feel like I'm stuck.
Huh.
I think every time I sort of thought I had to, oh, I just do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then I think inherently that becomes boring to me. And then that just kind of sucks the creativity from my mind, and I lose excitement, and that just becomes a drag. It doesn't make life fun. I'm someone where my personal life and professional life are just intertwined. Like I think my hobby is my job. Like I love politics. I love digital media. Like, this is what I do. And that's a great thing. But you have to find a nice break to those things. But I've definitely back ended into a lot of things that have come my way and kept an open mind. And it was a couple of years of consulting myself where I was hitting a wall because I knew I didn't want to build my own company. And then I started talking to people that I had worked with in past jobs. And my current boss, who's the head of Bully Pulpit International, I met with him at South by Southwest. I remember sitting on a floor because we couldn't find a conference room or anywhere to sit. And we were just like, what are you up to? What are you up to? And we knew each other from the Hillary campaign back in 2008. And he was like, hey, we should talk more. You should like maybe think about coming to BPI. And at the time, I hadn't given much thought just because I hadn't had much digital advertising experience, and that's what
Mm.
I was known about at the time. They were the digital advertising firm for the Obama campaign in 2008. Uh, and so in 2012, I started contracting through BPI, tested them out. I was a contractor through them, wasn't full time.
Wow.
I kept doing it gets better while I was at BPI. I got to test the waters on both sides, so it was a win-win for everyone. And then figured out that I liked it. We were
Mm.
about 30 people at the time, and this was back in 2012, 2013. I joined full time in 2013, um, and still here today. And now we have over 230 people,
Wow.
across different offices, both in the United States and Europe. And we continue to grow, and we like to punch above our weight. We're doing a lot of tremendous things for a lot of terrific brands, amazing political campaigns. that I can't get into now, but maybe after November 5th we could talk about it. And so we'll see on that. But that's been a ride in terms of being able to continue to work in consulting. And I think what's been great about it is that I don't feel stuck because
Mm,
I work on many different projects in many different industries. And I'm actually able to lend my expertise from one industry and parlay it into the other.
mm,
I frankly think that's what I've always done from my early
yeah,
on, like from my hobbies of a video camcorder to bringing that to a campaign. Like, how do I, work for a corporate public affairs, company, and teach them the lessons of politics, and vice versa, the scale of corporate advocacy and reputation, and how that applies to a political campaign.
right. So what do you spend most of your time doing?
A lot of meetings. No. I think it's really a mix. Like I have a team of folks that work with me across the different areas. I mean, what one day is different from another. I think I would try to narrow it down to like we create new ways to communicate and market to specific audiences, and are finding a way to measure that impact and change outcomes along the way. And that's leveraging all of the different new mediums and tools that we talk about, whether it's earned media, owned media, like the things that you have in your control, and then paid media, the budget that you have behind it to get on television, to run digital advertising in different areas. And so working with our teams to develop those plans in an integrated fashion
Mm.
that can help further the causes of what we're trying to achieve for our clients.
So it's really a lot of strategic thinking, right? And problem solving, right? Trying to draw on your vast expertise and the experiences you've had, right? And your staff. So that must be another way that it keeps it fresh, right? Because each client's different, each situation's different. You feel like it's dynamic, I imagine.
It is dynamic, and it could probably be too dynamic in a sense
Yeah.
that um, what we do is not cookie cutter. We like to tailor our work to each client.
Yeah.
So it does require you to uh, be fast paced, encourage a team where people, have a voice at the table, and are collaborative and can take ownership of specific things,
Right.
and help bring things to fruition, because it can't just fall on one person at the end of the day.
Right. Right. Um, what what role is AI playing, if any, in your work? And I know most people in AI feel like 5 years out, like who the heck knows? But can you even think like a year or two from now, like where's it headed in terms of your industry?
Yeah, like I think everyone is both equally excited but equally nervous about AI. I think I'll split this in two. One is, I think, what of our clients and are probably more concerned about, and then the second, like the functions of how it could be helpful. From a client perspective, a lot of the clients that we work with are very nervous about how AI could be a threat to their business. Whether that's social media platforms that we may work for, and how that could help spark more misinformation on platforms, just because it's so easy to create. At the end,
Right.
a lot of them have been ahead of the curve on this, and they have been doing it behind the scenes for years. And it's just not something that it's easy to communicate. How you're working on that. From a use case perspective, it definitely was the buzz term the last 2 years, and continues to be. I think the jury's still out at how it's actually going to change things, because I think that there was a time about a year ago that I think people thought we were going into this was the internet, and then like we had the internet in 2000 that really opened doors, and then there would be AI, and then we'd like leap to the next thing.
Right.
This one's going to probably take a little bit longer to filter through. I think you're
Mm.
already seeing some of the benefits of AI in terms of writing, like where I think there are agencies out there that use AI to draft emails that go out from a mass email communications to do fundraising, for campaigns. Uh, my concern with that is that then everything looks the same and people are going to start to
Right.
check out at the end of the day. I think we would probably use AI more as an idea generator, kind of
Hmm.
leveraging it to make certain tasks that are more remedial, like done through AI versus through a person to be an assistant. Um, but I really think AI is probably only as good as the person controlling the AI at this stage. We'll see where we are in like 50 years.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
if you know how to use it and when to use it and how to use it well, that's going to make you better as an employee. Just because we're going to get to a stage where there's going to be more flexibility for employees to leverage AI, but then we're also going to quickly get to a stage where there'll be guardrails put up
right,
on
right.
that. And so navigating that, I'm assuming it's funny because I think what's happening in education is probably um, that first ground war on AI,
Yeah, right.
just because writing papers and drafting copy is actually the easiest, more tangible thing for AI to help someone with.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think, and I imagine for a firm like yours, there's less likelihood in the next year or two, at least, of jobs being lost to AI because you are trying to be so unique, and the human element, the creativity, the innovativeness of your work is part of what distinguishes you, right?
Yeah, I
But,
mean,
you know,
yeah, you can. It's hard for AI to resolve completely strategic and complex challenges that involve stakeholders where personalities may be involved
right.
or
Yeah.
things like that. So like I'm not concerned necessarily by the day-to-day work that we do. It's actually seen more as enhancement. Like
Right. Yeah.
how can I do more things now and
Yeah.
and optimize my work? Like,
Right.
and that's, I think, most people working in agencies. There's probably some on the design side of things that maybe there may be opportunities to kind of create more content. Leveraging AI
Right.
versus like a
Right.
graphic designer. Like, I know I can use Photoshop, but like, will I need to use Photoshop? Like, can I just have AI do something for me?
Right.
It's not there yet. Like, every now and then there's a six finger on a person. Like, you get like
Right.
like
Right.
fortunately, like there's some job security still there.
Right. Last question, because you've been so generous with your time. I really appreciate it. So it's almost a cliche at this point that we live in a polarized world, right? Certainly this country politically. To what extent does that make your job easier or more difficult or radically different than it was 10 years ago?
I think it depends on who I'm working with. On one level, like if I'm working with a political campaign, it's one or the other. But I think working with a lot of the other efforts out there that may be apolitical, uh, we're at a tipping point. Um, my answer to this question is probably going to be different in 2 months.
Uh,
Just because I think you're going to see with say if Trump wins this next election, then there's a lot of concern over like what will actually happen with some of the existing things that we may take for granted now, whether it's like ESG or other topics that like are really going to be very important for a lot of companies on how they govern on a day-to-day basis and change things. If he loses, I think that there's just almost this openness to a generational shift in what will likely happen just by sheer age. Uh,
hmm,
and so the polarization hopefully will metal out a little bit. Um, but you know, brands can't speak. Brands are having a harder and harder time speaking to both sides.
right.
And that's made harder by polarization at the end of the day. And so do we start to see a fracturing of brands? And I think that's where I was going with it. Maybe if Trump wins, I do see maybe there's going to be more of a rise on like, here's the left brand for this, here's the right brand for
Yeah.
that. And you see that a little bit now, the Patagonias of the world and things like that. But you're probably going to see more and more of that just because it's going to force brands to take positions at the end of the day, even though I think a lot of them have been reticent to stick their head out, but they will be forced versus maybe more of a return to kind of a world where that discourse can still happen, but people view companies in a different light.
Right. That's pretty profound. And it makes sense, right? I mean, if you think about it, that the polarization is becoming not just about like a cult of personality with Trump, but it's about paradigms that people have. Like they're becoming cultural paradigms and norms. And it's hard to advertise and to brand yourself to appeal to both sides when those core paradigms and the values that underpin them are so radically different in some cases, right? I mean, incompatible in some cases.
Yeah, and that's where I think the concern would be is there 4 more years of what
Right.
I'd experienced from 2017 to 2021, where there was polarization and there was definitely two sides consistently against each other.
Right.
Versus, I think if there's a turning of the page, I think that maybe lets some air out and kind of allows people to kind of return to an area where we can just talk to each other on a day-to-day basis and not have to necessarily only talk to people in our own echo chambers. That makes matters worse.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yes.
We can make family gatherings a lot easier for a lot of people. Right. Well, Scott, thank you so much again, being so generous with your time and sharing your story. I don't know if this is the appropriate things. I'm so proud of you, but I hope you're proud of yourself. Like, what an extraordinary life that you've led and career that you've created and impact that you've had over the years. And so I really appreciate you sharing that. It's great to catch up with you. So thank you.
Definitely so much. And I look back on my days in high school and the seeds that were planted there. So appreciate your guidance and, along the years. And it's been amazing to stay in touch with you and hear about the things that you're doing and what you're trying to do to help young people.
Thank you, Scott. Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Scott Zumwalt half as much as I did. I just think he's fascinating. It's a great story, inspirational. He's so humble. He's had such an impact, right, in revolutionizing the digital marketing and social media marketing world and politics and advocacy. And I think listening to him about the evolution of his career and the choices he made, I think it's a great example for other people in their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s even, like on how you navigate life and how you navigate a career. How the dots get connected and how a lot of it is, figuring it out as you go and trying to make the most of opportunities that present themselves. It's really a great lesson about how we're all just trying to figure it out, right? Even the most successful of us, like Scott. So I think that was really wonderful. And also his whole story about personal discovery and coming out and how that empowered him personally and professionally, I thought that was amazing too. Just wonderful. So thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you'll share this with other people because I think a lot of people could really benefit from this one. And I hope you're following the podcast, and please leave a rating and review. We'd love to get as many 5-star ratings as we can to get this in front of more people who could benefit from listening to it. And I hope you're following me on social media at Integrity and Joy. And be sure to check out the website, integrityandjoy.com, especially if you think that you might benefit from some life coaching. I'd love to have a conversation with you and explore how I might be of help. In the meantime, stay tuned, keep listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Cool.
All right. Thanks. That's great. Yeah. I really appreciate it. I know you got like a million things to do, so I want to keep you, but I
Yeah.
really, really appreciate this. I'll keep you posted on when it's going to go up. In the meantime, I'll send you a little, thank you email and ask for like a 1 sentence bio I'll do in the intro,
Great.
and then a little paragraph one that'll go in the notes.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Cause I realize it's probably easier for people to see like that experience and background and then hear it. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for thinking of me, and yeah, like let me know how I can help, and yeah, definitely keep in touch. This was fun.
Yeah, great. If you ever get to the Boston area, let me know. Love to see you. And next time I'm in
You're up.
DC.
You're up there. You're up in Boston now. Okay.
Yeah, I when I started doing this full time a year ago, I realized I could do it anywhere. And so
Yeah.
for the first time since college, I'm living back in
There you go.
Boston near family. So it's nice.
Yeah. Sorry. The Red Sox are not.
Oh, I was going to say so when you talked about Bush
Yeah.
throwing out the first pitch for the Yankees. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
just felt conflicted at the time. It was a unifying moment for all. So.
Yeah, I sucked it up in the moment.
Yes. We'll see. There's a game tonight, so I'll be watching that.
All right, Scott. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. If today's episode resonated with you, imagine what we could accomplish together in a one-to-one coaching session. Visit integrityandjoy.com to learn more and book your free consultation. Let's create the life you've been striving for.